Today, there are a few 100,000 of people that can do animation, and it's very sad because it's the first form of expression and storytelling in a 3D space. If you don't have that, you cannot make character express themselves. So we think it more as a liberation of a very, very technical thing that people couldn't do before, to many, many people that are able to do it. So for me, it's not replacing, it's like more creating a whole new market on enabling people to do things that they couldn't do before.
I'm with Yassine Tahi, who is CEO and founder of Kinetix. They are blazing a new trail into generative AI with motion, animation, performance around avatars and virtual spaces. Yassine, welcome.
Hey, John, thank you for the invitation.
Let's talk a little bit about the market that you saw. So, as I understand it, you're not in so much the creative part where people are producing games. You're focused on the end users, the players, the people who are in virtual spaces, and really empowering them to be creative through performance and motion. Can you take us a little bit through the opportunity you saw in the market and what you're trying to accomplish with generative AI and avatars at Kinetix?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working on Kinetix for the past 2 years. My co-founder being a researcher in AI applied to 3D animation. So when we started first Kinetix with the idea of enabling anyone to create motion, we started with video to animation, and we recently launched text to animation. But we prefer to say now emotes than animation. So we kind of differentiate between these two. For us, animation is what you need to build a game. So let's say you're building World of Warcraft, you code all the movements for your gameplay, and that's the animation. So basically, a game developer will be working with animators, and you bring this content in game and you push it. Then there is a second market, which is the market of emotes, which are the movements you buy in game. The most famous one being the Fortnite emotes. They're making hundreds of millions every year there, and this is where we focus. So this market is when a game is launched, is it's the in-game purchase cosmetics market, and we are operating in this market to enable anyone to customize and create whatever moves they want and bring it directly in-game in a 3D space.
So first of all, I had a game that I operated way back in the 90s. It was called Legends of Future Past. And we, like a number of other like multi-user dungeons, we had a slash emote command. So you could act out in text whatever it is that you wanted to do, because there would be, I don't know how many verbs we had, probably a few hundred verbs were recognized in the game. But of course, everybody ultimately wants to be able to perform things in a way that aren't constrained by the canned responses. So we had slash emote. And it feels like that's been something missing from these online spaces, right? You don't have that complete expressiveness. But I want to return to that and the expression. But let's talk a little bit about what you were referring to on Fortnite there, because I want to double click on that for a bit. You said Fortnite is generating hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue off of the emotes that they do have in the game. Could you elaborate on that? Because I think people may not even realize how much of the income of a world like Fortnite is coming from this kind of player user expressiveness.
Yes, sure. So basically, virtual worlds used to monetize through advertising, and we've seen the past few years that advertising is something that is a bit crushing. And we're seeing that in-game assets, especially the ones around cosmetics, are the one that making success of games like Fortnite. And the forecast for the next few years show that it will be growing and growing even more. Um, Emotes is one of the most liked categories by the users because it's something very social that they use to interact with each other. There's also other categories, obviously, like wearables and the skins for your avatar. And Fortnite has been very popular on the memes and bringing also real moves in the real life into the games, which also created some problems. There were some lawsuits around Fortnite and a lot of artists claiming their rights to ownership and earning money from the money that Fortnite is making. But Fortnite always won the lawsuit because there is no protection of few moves. You can protect a choreography, but you cannot protect few moves. So yeah, I think there is a big opportunity there also for working with creator artists to help them monetize across different virtual worlds and games, and bring the popular culture and the internet meme culture into this virtual world, and kind of bridge kind of ByteDance/TikTok with the virtual worlds and games.
Right. I want to return to the monetization aspect in a bit, but before we go there, let's talk a little bit more about how you're actually enabling this creativity. So you're allowing basically text to animation, text to motion. And my understanding is there's a little bit of a delay before it can interpret that and actually implement it in animation. But can you talk about where you are now with this technology, and what is the scope of the expressiveness that someone can have, and where do text prompts play into this?
Yes. So there are two parts. There is the AI part, which is the customer facing part, where you type something and you have the emotes generated. But this is like theoretically, it sounds easy, but the most difficult part is to put it in production in a 3D world. So our model is a B2B2C. So we work with virtual worlds like Sandbox, Zepeto currently to integrate our technologies in their engine. So basically, we're putting our SDK to be able to communicate with their avatar rig and to be able to kind of stream the emote from the cloud to their avatar system. So as a user, you'll be able to prompt or input a video because we're more working on input. General input can be image, text, also music. We're working on it on R&D, but for the moment we announced and we have a released video, and text will be released soon. And this will then match the avatar rig in the game and make your avatar move that way. So we're providing the end-to-end infrastructure for the virtual worlds so that the end users will be able to benefit from this in-game. Today, the state of the art of the computing, as you can see in Stable Diffusion or like in Midjourney, is you write a prompt. It is a computing time depending on the queue and how many people are using the service, because there are many servers that are allocated for that. And then it will compute with the AI and send back the animation and then play it in your character. For now, there is a bit of delay, and we're working on optimizing to make it as smooth for the user to be able to write something and then to play it. Obviously, it's not like a research on library. It's like generative. That's why it's taking this compute time for the moment.
So building big generative libraries is very data hungry. That's why things like Midjourney have started to work really well, is because they have this vast reservoir of data that they can go to on the internet and pull in art and graphics and learn from it and train their models, and then you're able to text prompt from it. What I'm hearing from you though is there's this text prompting aspect, which is an ease of use kind of interface for bringing various kinds of content to life on the screen, but you still also need the data. A big part of what you seem to be doing is dealing with the data problem in building up animation catalogs by having the ability to actually look at video and also map video to the way that maps to a particular avatar. Am I understanding it correctly?
Almost. Let's say that there is different data sets for the training of the different algorithms. We're using animation data, but to train our deep learning algorithms on video versus text is not the same. Because video to animation, you will need data from a camera and the motion capture exact correct data in front of that. So you're able to like the AI will be understanding that this video match this movement. And then on a huge data set, it will learn from that and able to replicate a movement when you play it on a video. With the text, it's different. It will take animation data, but it requires labeled data about emotion, about gesture, etc. So we relabeled the data sets we already had to be able to retrain and to be able to put that in production in terms of AI. In terms of SDK and how we interact with the avatar, the end of the funnel is the same. It's sending an animation, which is retargeted in the avatar rig and transformed into an emote. Because as I said before, animation and emotes are different because there are some standards. You have to apply some filters of, for example, you cannot move towards a certain distance, because if you're in a game and you play an emote and you jump from a cliff, it will mess with the gameplay. So there are some constraints that are applied to the emote, and also moderation, because we want to ensure, especially in games that are under, like for the underage people, that there is no bad movement that is brought in the game.
Right. I can only imagine the issues with that. Let's try to connect the different pieces. Let's go back to the creator aspect of this. So I'm a creator and I want to make a new animation that I would love to share in virtual space across these different platforms that you're talking about. What do I do? Just kind of bring me to basics. Like how do I capture my video and my body movement, and then what's step one?
So depends. That we have multiple tools. We have tools for creators, and that's what we are working with Zepeto to integrate. That's for the community of creators that want to create emotes, then to put them on the libraries of the game, for example. And that's, let's say, the target of creators. This is a cloud-based platform. It's accessible already on our studio. It's called Kinetix.tech. You can log in and you have multiple features. You can input a video. We will extract the motion. You can add filters, you can edit, you can blend different emotes together. So, and we have libraries also available. So this is like kind of a creator-friendly tool, and these assets then um, can be brought into different virtual worlds. So that's for the creator. For the gamer, what we are doing now is currently integrating our SDK and integration in game with some of the games that we are collaborating with, so that when you're in game, you have the emote wheel, like in Fortnite, and then you click on customize. It will open your camera, you will film yourself, and then your asset will be directly available on your emote wheel in game. That's the workflow for the gamers and the end users. And that's kind of the two categories we're addressing for the moment.
In the past, the way this would be done at like a AAA game in a game studio is they would get people into a big studio. They'd wear these whole motion capture outfits. There'd be all these light points on it that they capture, and then the motion would be translated into the 3D geometry, the motion and the animation, and that could then be used to render characters within a studio environment. Give me your thoughts on the trajectory of this kind of technology, of like that kind of motion capture tech versus something that just looks at a video camera. Where is the future here, and where do you see creators generally, not only for the Kinetix platform, but are people going to be using these motion capture rigs in the future? If they are, what are the circumstances, and where will they not use them as much?
Yes, so I believe in multi-camera. So we're just to come back, we're doing mono camera. So you can input a video from TikTok, YouTube, and it's more mass market. For the animators that want
Hmm.
to do like more professional quality of animation that is more high end, because the motion capture data with the suits, obviously it's a higher quality, even if you have to rework it because the stability of the feed, for example, is not perfect. So you have to have a manual input on the motion capture data that you extract. But for me, for the professional capture, I believe more that multi-camera with AI will be the future there for the professional studios that want to create their own moves. Um, for us, the creators, the more long tail, um, they will use mono camera for me. And then the question is not only how can I create the content, but also how can I bring this content into the games? Because if you create a motion, you also need to put it on an avatar and to adapt it to the right bones and the right rigs. So there are other technologies involved then to put because an animation that is working on a specific character might not work in another one. So there are also what we call the retargeting technologies to be able to transfer a motion from one avatar to another. So let's say that there are different technologies today, monocamera, multi-camera, but I'm sure that we will get rid of the hardware and we will keep camera capture on the next 5 years, let's say. And on the longer term, my vision is a bit different. and these are some projects we're working on with our R&D department. In 10 years from now, I don't think there will be any more animation at all. It will be
Hmm.
directly AI NPCs that are automatically behaving. So we're working, for example, now on smart filters and discussing with Inworld, for example, which are doing the chat GPT of avatars, and learning from a text discussion or from a context, you'll be able automatically to play some naturally generated gestures depending on the dialogue. So it's kind of linking our text to emote, but the future of the text to emote will be linked with the emotions and being able to automatically create motion as you go. So there won't be this process of game developers creating animation from monocamera, multi-camera, or whatever. There will be game developer integrating an SDK that is driving the motion automatically of the avatars, and it will be AI generated directly. So if we think midterm, I think there is still space for this kind of traditional capture and doing what we were doing the past 30 years, but with an improvement. So let's say that it's an incremental advancement, but I think there will be like a completely different approach to motion in gaming in the next few years.
So I want to kind of recapture a little bit of what we've been talking about so that everybody appreciates the complexity of these problems. Because on the one hand, there's the motion capture and then the labeling of what motions even mean. There's the physics of spaces, right? Just because you say you want to do an animation, it has to respect the actual physics and the properties of a space, the obstacles, the other objects that are present there. Working around that becomes an issue. You also mentioned game design constraints, right? Just because it might, in theory, be physically possible if you imagined a 3D area, you might not want to allow a player to jump off a cliff in your earlier example, or do whatever it is, because it may not be appropriate for the constraints of a game design system. And then on top of that, going back to the basic motion capture pieces, to get high quality capture still today requires this multi-camera setup with motion capture rigs and whatnot. So being able to get the same kind of quality off of, say, a phone is a really hard challenge. So we've got a whole long list of really complicated problems here. On the motion capture side, if we think about single camera setup, and I'm just going to speculate for a moment here because I'm seeing some parallels with some of the recent work in neural radiance fields. Not that animation really is a direct map to the way neural radiance fields work, but the interesting aspect of them is this idea of you don't actually have to get a picture of every conceivable angle and position of an image to translate it into a 3D model. You can get a sparse number of inputs. So in animation, it seems like we almost need to do the same thing. Like we need to start filling in the areas of the unknown with the AI models that essentially integrate this information about the way motion should happen, even though we didn't actually capture it. Am I on the right track here? Which is a big part of AI, is like filling in the gaps, not actually reproducing reality as we saw it, but guessing close enough that it's going to be accurate.
Yes, you're completely right, but it's depending on what we're optimizing for. So that's why it's super hard to compare sometimes different algorithms for video to animation, because, for example, let's say your hand is behind my back, so you cannot see what I'm doing. So it would infer many possibilities. The question is, there is always a trade-off between fidelity to the input video or realism of a fluid and a natural animation. So at Kinetix, we made a choice of sacrificing sometimes the fidelity to the input video, but to respect the dynamism and the movement, because we are addressing some people that want to rework the animation for most of them. So we prefer to a bit enhance the animation and make it look good rather than to be perfectly fitting exactly the motion that was played in the video. Sometimes you have to make some trade-offs, and these are the trade-offs we're making. But yeah, and if we can push even further on that, I don't believe that users want only, and that's what we learned the past few years, and that's what we are inputting in our text to emotes. I don't think that users want always to copy in the reality. I think when you're in virtual world and you want to express yourself, you want to be able to do things you cannot do in the real life. So that's where the smart filters, we are like have a robotic AI, like a robotic filter, so you can input a filter on your emote to make you look more robot or more excited. So this kind of creative filters for me are also the future of how we will express ourselves in this virtual world, because why be our exact self uh, that in real life in this virtual world? I think it's a bit boring.
Everything we do online is going to undergo massive transformation in the coming years. Right now, we're still doing videos in the old fashioned way, basically, right? So we do video conferencing, just like we're literally doing right now. We're capturing video, but in the not too distant future, it may actually be a lot more efficient to use some of these like avatar codec systems, like the one that Meta was demoing a few months back, where instead of capturing video, we capture motion, we map it to an avatar, and that becomes who we are in virtual space. I guess we'll all look better. We'll be able to look however we want, but also now you're taking it to the next level, which is maybe in addition to the particular gestures we're making and transferring that over the internet, over the metaverse, we'll also be able to go have filters that process and modify our motion. We'll be able to add more motion. We'll be able to get up and dance if we wanted to. So we'll be able to integrate all of this expressiveness into avatar spaces. Now, right now, there's still a little bit of a delay in your text to animation system. I think you were telling me maybe a minute or so to go through the process of making that happen. How close to real time do you think this will be? And let's just dream for a moment, like 5 years, 10 years from now, how will this technology really work online for us as end users in everything from online games like Fortnite to video teleconferencing or whatever?
Yeah, I think definitely for now is asynchronous. That means that you create your content, but then it's stored. That means that you can create your moves and your signature moves, let's say, and you save them, and then you can click on a button on or activate them in game with a command, like you were saying earlier, slash dance, and you can have your own dance in this command. So it's like kind of asynchronous, but in the future will be, I think, real time. We're getting there. We're already doing some real time with the 2D, as you can see, like in Microsoft Teams. Now you can have your avatar. So we're already doing it with the 2D. In the 3D, I think in the next 5 years, obviously, it will be possible to do it and to be able to do a live performance in a 3D space with a mono camera or text input. But I will need to check with my R&D team if I'm not saying something crazy. But usually, I'm always more optimistic. But uh, I think it will be doable, and we're currently also working on like the first step is optimizing, reducing the time. And then the question is, do we keep the same level of quality, or do we sacrifice a bit of quality for computing time? And there's always a trade-off.
I'm remembering back to the Google collab sheets I used with like these GAN models for 2D image synthesis just a couple of years ago. When I was doing those, it would take like hours to make one frame. Now you can go to Midjourney and get a frame, a few seconds, really less than a minute. And now with some models, it really is down to fractions of a second in video generation. We're talking about multiple frames per second of synthesis. It's amazing to look at the exponential curve behind how fast some of these models are improving. And it seems like that will improve everywhere because we've got GPUs improving, we've got algorithms improving. But your problem is really complicated because we're trying to take like one snapshot of reality, the way we move, the way we interact in spaces, synthesize that with animations, and then respect the physics of things. And I'm also thinking through this research paper that came out just a few months ago from Google. Is called Dreamix, where they're trying to get avatars to work with text to animation prompting. Not exactly the kind of thing you're doing, but it, but respecting the physics of space and actually putting multiple characters together, putting obstacles, see how they respond to it. How do you bring that into an environment? Because that seems like a problem at the game system level. Like the game system itself has to manifest the physics within the 3D engine. And then at the same time, you're bringing in all of this animation data that they may not have thought about. Take me through just the complexity of that problem and how you're thinking of it.
So everything that has to do with an interaction, it's always complicated. That's why we I think, took us more than a year and a half to solve the fit grounding problem. So because
Mm.
the first interaction that everyone has all the time is having their feet on the ground. So that's the first interaction, and it's a very very complex problem to solve. For the other aspect of interacting, like bringing an external content that will interact with an environment, it's something we're not working on at the moment. Um, and also because it's not serving the main use case we're doing for the moment. So we're first deploying that, and then there are, I think, many many hard problems to solve, as the one you say. But I think this will come more from the game studios themselves on the AI NPCs that I was mentioning before. And I think it's more papers linked to reinforcement learning, how you can place agent that will behave in a space and learn how to interact with the space. It's more what we call reinforcement learning, which is another branch of the AI. But I think that will come directly from the studios. It's let's say that it solved a different kind of problem, and it's more for the animation of the NPCs.
Yes, and just as I'm recalling what I was just mentioning a moment ago, I said DreamX, which is closer to like the runway ML stuff where they're trying to do restyling of views. The paper that I was thinking of was actually an NVIDIA paper on physics and text to animation prompting. We'll provide links to some of these things in the show notes so that people can check it out afterwards. Let's double click way back to the conversation on monetization we were having earlier. So you've also imagined this as being a new way to monetize content, to create a new form of creator economy where people could contribute animations, make content that other people could benefit from in a community. Could we talk about that a little bit? Because this has been a big conversation around AI in general, which is there's, on the one hand, people who are saying, well, we're just training things from observable phenomena and content that already exists. And then there's sort of the opposite side of this conversation, which is, well, people are taking and benefiting from content online and making it available for reuse. What are your thoughts on that, and why might animation be different, and how are you hoping to solve that with the economy?
So first, animation is a very complex tasks that are not accessible to a lot of people. Today, there are a few hundred thousand of people that can do animation, and it's very sad because it's the first form of expression and storytelling in a 3D space. If you don't have that, you cannot make character express themselves. So we think it more as a liberation of a very very technical thing that people couldn't do before, to many many people that are able to do it. So for me, it's not replacing, is like more creating a whole new market on enabling people to do things that they couldn't do before, first. And the second is also the legal aspect of it. Today, moves are not copyrighted, and we believe that uh, it doesn't have necessarily to be, but it can be a new form of reward for the creators and involve them in the process. And that's why we're currently, we had a deal with the BBC to work on Dancing with the Stars to create the moves from the Dancer Without Technology, um, and bring it into virtual world. We brought the move of Dancing with the Stars to NextDancer, which is a game we're collaborating with, a dance game. But we're also currently working with the Sandbox on bringing emotes for celebrities and bringing them into Sandbox in the future. And there are some things not disclosed yet, but working with big IPs to bring them into virtual worlds. And IPs are aware that now they can also monetize on these aspects. And we can work with the brands, IPs, but also creators that are doing super cool moves and that they can uh, put on Kinetix platform, and then we distribute them across virtual worlds. Because obviously, if you're Fortnite, you can negotiate with these big IPs because you have the size to do it. But let's say you're a smaller game, but you still want to bring fun content and original content to your game. You can just see us, and we will be able to open our libraries of branded emotes that are in collaboration with many virtual worlds and on the with many IPs and brands. And on the other side, for the IPs, they don't have to deal with hundreds of games. They can just work with us. We don't need the artists to come. We can just create with our technology and use their own videos, or they can send us a video. We create the content. We improve it, obviously, because it's premium content. So we have our own team that will redesign and improve the content. And then we can diffuse it in all the virtual worlds we're working on. It's kind of the same model as Ready Player Me that are doing with avatars and wearables, but for emotes.
You're touching on a topic which is a passion of mine around interoperability and this idea that creators can generate a type of content or script something, write code, whatever it is that defines how their creative process unfolds, but be able to deploy it across different ecosystems. Interoperability is a super hard problem, and now we're talking about like a super hard problem of animation for all the reasons that we talked about already: physics, game design constraints, motion capture, the prompting aspect, all of that. So, how do you think about interoperability? Because I'm thinking of like sandbox and voxelized environments like, that's like Minecraft, all the way to game-like things like Fortnite to maybe even things that are a little more hyper realistic. They've got a lot of different issues in their character structures, right? How do you deal with that?
Yes. So as I said in the beginning, our SDK is plugged to the engine of the game, so we have access to the rig system. And then we have a technology that is called retargeting. So once we produce one emote, a movement, we're able to automatically, we have like our adaptation for multiple rig systems. And today we already support Sandbox, Roblox, Unity, Unreal, Mixamo, Zepeto. So and also meta avatars. We're working on them. So we're
Mhm.
adapting our emotes to the most most of the animation like a rigs system. So once you create an emote, you'll be able to use it in theoretically in multiple virtual worlds, but we are still seeing a resistance because virtual worlds don't want you to be able to take this content and using it elsewhere. But for us, for now, all the games will be plugged to. Theoretically, the emote that you created in this game, you will be able to use it in another platform.
Another thought that's occurring to me is one of props, and maybe we're getting into future stuff, but that's fine. We're going to dream here about stuff that might take a while to get to. But if I think of Fortnite, for example, you're carrying weapons around, you've got guns and stuff like that. In another environment, maybe you're playing with a ball or something. I'm imagining juggling, right? So how do you start also taking it to the even the next level beyond that in terms of thinking about the kinds of prop interactions that I might have in an environment, because that seems core to animation. If I go back to what you were describing earlier, truly democratizing animation so that anybody who wants to participate in this can go beyond the few 100,000 people that do it today. Geez, I think I just flagged yet another super complicated part of this technology, right?
Yes, it's something we're not doing. Like as you know, for example, if you have a weapon in a game and you play an emote, the usually it disappears and you do the emote and then it reappears. So for the moment, we're sticking to this kind of artifacts to not deal with the assets and really stick to the only animation file, uh, which is already very hard. And in the future, we'll be able to do also. You can think of VFX, for example, if you do an emote and then you have like my idea, if we go crazy and think about the future, my idea was to say when you create an emote you have like different kind of elements emotes. You have like water emotes, and we have like our team worked on a fun project which was to create every time you generate an emote, our AI will calculate the spin, the how our aerial is it if you're like flat, like jumping, and a lot of criteria. and it will determine if it's water, electricity, wind, or something. And then it will create different attributes. And when you play an emote, you will generate, for example, electricity or water to add like of the like when you play an emote, you want to, as the young people say, to flex and to show how you're the best. So if you want to then generate like storms and stuff like that, it will be generated. And my team was happy to work on this to showcase some stuff, but bringing this into cross games, it's a bit of a challenge because everyone has their own rendering system, VFX, and we cannot deal with multiple assets for the moment. So that's why we decided to stay focused on emotes and bring emotes to the players on a more social environment level. And yeah, the idea was to restrain and constrain the problem we're solving, because it's difficult to bring um, to bring an external asset directly in the game. It's already a big challenge. Let alone bringing multiple assets and VFX and stuff. It will be difficult to bring cross games.
Well, you're giving us a good product management 101 lesson here for startups, actually, because the fun thing about everything you're talking about is you can dream really big on this, and there's all these aspects of animation, performance, even almost cinematography. Like there's all these aspects that you could potentially bring into this, and it touches all these super complicated problems of physics, motion, performance, expressiveness, narrative, even. But to be a startup, you actually have to start with the problem you can immediately solve. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your own entrepreneurial journey. Like what brought you to this problem? How did you settle on this particular subset of problems? And just kind of the history, the story to date. Take us through that.
Yeah. So before Kinetix, I come from a finance like VC. I was working with the startups. A lot of I launched one of the biggest VCs now in Morocco, where I'm from, and I was working with a lot of SaaS marketplaces. And let's say that in Morocco, we're still like kind of taking the innovation and like e-commerce marketplaces that already exist elsewhere and trying to bring them to the local market and the MENA region. And I was like, um, I saw a lot of those kind of startups, and I was like, I don't want to create a startup like that. I want to create a startup where everything is disruptive and new. And I think I took the challenge because we're working on since 2020. We're working on AI, which is like a new market with the metaverse and virtual worlds, which is also a new market. So I think the I wanted something that is at the edge of what technology can bring and what technology can do. And when I was choosing the industry, I wanted to have fun actually, and I think gaming is a very passion. Like everyone that is in gaming is passionate. I spent my whole childhood playing MMORPGs actually, and during the COVID, when I started Kinetix, I was playing again Lineage 2, which is my favorite game of all times, and I was like, I never had so much fun. So I think I want to create a company in this field. And it was like, okay, how can we bring technology to this field? And I met my co-founder who was doing AI in 3D animation. I was like, okay, all the pieces were together to launch Kinetix. And I think we made the right decision. We were a bit early market because it was a bit challenging in the beginning, especially to raise funds in when you're a bit early and the trend is not there yet. It's a bit complex sometimes because you have to educate a lot and explain what you're doing. And when you talk about complex animation issues to VCs, they don't understand what is animation, why it's complicated. They will just say, "Oh yeah, 3D animation is a small market. We don't want to deal with that." And then when you show them, "Oh look, but in Fortnite they're generating like almost a billion every 2 years," then it's like, oh, maybe it's an interesting market. Um, so yeah, it was a, a challenging, let's say, uh, explanation of how it's growing. But I think we have a great momentum now with the generative AI and also the metaverse idea of everyone is convinced that um, we will be living in virtual worlds, not necessarily with VR, but experiencing avatar-based identity cross platforms. It can be through our stickers on WhatsApp or through our avatar in Roblox, but we will have a virtual identity, and it's something that is already here today and it's growing. the second trend is like UGC. People will be customizing more and more their identity and their assets, and they will be able to bring those in the games, and it's something that is growing as well. And the last part is, of course, AI will be the facilitator to all of this, and it's something that is growing more and more. And the quality level that we reach in text and video, image, and soon video, and then 3D is comforting the point to say that in few years the quality will be maybe uh, the same as Pixar. And 3 years ago I was doubting it. Now I'm like, maybe, like, look what we reach in terms of image and video. Maybe we'll be able to generate animation that is reaching the Pixar quality in 5 years from now. And that's very exciting because everyone will be able to tell amazing stories and share amazing content, and yeah, I think that's very exciting to live in these times.
And you're talking about what I think is the right way to define and think of metaverse, right? So over the last couple of years, it's had all these different definitions. But we have the metaverse. Roblox is the metaverse. Fortnite is the metaverse. We've got hundreds of millions of people interacting in the metaverse if we think of it as virtual worlds and virtual spaces that you can go into and project yourself and then express yourself creatively. I think it's that creative aspect that's really core to metaverse. And we might have more and more real time and more augmented and virtual reality interfaces to these systems, but it's not about the interface. This is just my own opinion, the way I describe it. It's not the interface, it could be on any kind of screen. Metaverse is more of a state of being, it's about becoming digital humans and being creative in these spaces. And you're playing right at the middle of that. How do you think this notion of metaverse is going to evolve over the next couple of years? And it's kind of become almost this toxic term over the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. But is it going to come back now? I saw Tim Sweeney posting the other day about how, hey, look, there's like 600 million people in the metaverse, and rumors of its death has been greatly exaggerated. What's happening here with I guess the word, but more important than the word, what's happening in the world from a market perspective?
I think it's all come back to the hype cycles and media. I mean, like, it's all a buzzword. Everyone talk about it. Everyone is excited, and everyone define it the way they want. But if we come back to the usage where people are spending time, actually, when I was playing Lineage 2 and I was like in TeamSpeak with all my friends and spending time, not only playing, but spending time together and having fun and socializing, it was already part of the what we called metaverse. Um, I think we're getting there slowly, and if we like take the full definition, it's taking time, and it will all converge. And no, Web3 is not dead, no metaverse is not dead. It's just all these kind of technologies are combining themselves to enable use cases, and adoption is getting more and more, and it's slowly increasing. And yeah, as you said, there are already 600 million people playing, and these people, guess what, are the younger generation, so they're here to stay. So I think hype cycles and media is kind of sometimes misleading in terms of what's happening, and we I think we've been brainwashed with this idea of, yeah, the metaverse is us in a VR and it's like Ready Player One, and I don't think that's the my vision. It's not my vision of the metaverse. So uh, I think, as you said before, virtual worlds will be socializing, creating, exchanging, creating economies, and where there will be interactions and economies. This is something that's already happening, and it will be increasing more and more. It can happen on a phone or on an AR device if the AR device are good enough so that it's become natural for people to use that. And if not, it's okay. The idea of the metaverse is still there. It's not depending on a specific device. It's depending on the usage that people have, and that's already there and is growing.
So the metaverse, whether it's Lineage, Fortnite, Roblox, Sandbox, Minecraft, like all of these are manifestations of projecting ourselves into digital space, but more importantly, our expressiveness, our creativity in virtual space. And core to that is democratizing the ability to shape these spaces which is what you're doing. So you're making it possible to go from the few 100,000 people that can create animations to maybe that'll be a few 100 million people sometime down the road. That's what the metaverse is going to be all about. So, Yassine, this has been really fun. This problem that you're working on is super complex, super complicated, and I have a much deeper appreciation for the challenges of animation systems with characters and prompting them into existence through all of this conversation. So, thank you so much for joining us for this episode and talking about it. I definitely encourage everybody to check out some of the other links to your company and some of the research that we mentioned along the way here. But Yassine, thank you so much for being on the episode.
Thank you so much.